in a minute. He was the longest serving member of Congress who passed away also yesterday. Charlie Pierce tweeted last night that retweeted a John Dingell quote who said, "I fought the Nazis once, and after Charlottesville, he said, if I have to fight them again, I will." And Charlie Pierce's response was bad ass. A lot of people could say that about John Dingell, who I served with for a little bit. A tough guy, tough guy. You could also say that about Frank Robinson. He didn't put up with, as my father would say, a lot of people's guff.
You know, both John Dingell and Frank Robinson had shared one trait, several traits, but one trait that was outstandingly clear. They were both unafraid. They stood in the batter's box, one in the political batter's box, the other in the Major League Baseball batter's box, and they were unafraid. They stood there and they stood up for what they believed in every single day they were in the job. John Dingell, especially over the course of an incredibly long career, a family seat in Michigan that he held. His father held the seat before him. And Frank Robinson, high school basketball teammate of Bill Russell in Oakland, California. That must have been some team.
State champs.
State champions in California. Yeah, and a guy who fought through all sorts of discrimination. You know, Jackie Robinson, of course, maybe one of the 10 greatest Americans of the 20th century, but Frank Robinson is right up there, too. He came along after Larry Doby. It wasn't easy being a black ball player. It certainly wasn't easy being the first black manager of a major league team. John Dingell fought for every good cause that you can think of. Joe, you served with him briefly, so you knew him as a tough guy who was committed to the best things that you could do for America.
Well, Frank Robinson and John Dingell also shared something else, the ability to instill fear in those that wanted to cross their path. And Gene Robinson, I was always amazed that when I first got to Congress in early 1995, Republicans were in power, and there were a lot of people that were running around Newt Gingrich and wherever Newt went, that's whatever. But on one side of the House chamber, in the corner, you had John Dingell, and you had the old wise bulls that were, they may be Republicans running their own committees, but they were all still standing around John Dingell, and they were all still standing around Murtha. Jack Murtha also. Two giants that, again, even in the minority, they didn't need a chairmanship to be powerful forces. Same thing with Frank Robinson. Again, fearless men.
Yeah, they're both first ballot Hall of Famers. You know, Frank Robinson literally and John Dingell figuratively. One thing about John Dingell in recent years, he had a wicked Twitter feed, and whenever something happened, particularly in the Trump era, he always had just a perfect acid comment. So that's how he, one way he contributed to the political debate, even after he left Congress. He was a giant, and we will miss them both.
And Joe, he was tweeting up until a couple of days ago, as a matter of fact. One way to look at John Dingell's life is to think of the span of it. He was on the floor as a House page when FDR made his speech in December of 1941, a day that will live in infamy speech suggesting and imploring Congress to declare war on Japan. He was on the floor of the House and was with us now to see an African-American president elected all the way through Donald Trump's first term.
Yeah, and a real giant.
One more note on Congressman Dingell. He was undefeated in 30 elections, just to give you some perspective. Coming up, the Mueller investigation may be winding down, but the other investigation just started. They're winding up. Former Justice Department official Matthew Miller joins us with his new analysis. Plus, Congressman Eric Swalwell calls the acting attorney general's appearance before Congress today, quote, a damage assessment of the rule of law. The congressman joins us ahead on Morning Joe.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.